are out on the ice. If you see shanties out there and people are fishing, then pretty good chance it's safe for you to go out there. So I wouldn't, especially if you're new to ice fishing, even think about going out on the ice unless you see other people out there too. Once you get a few years under your belt, and you know an area pretty good, and you think, you can go out there by yourself, that's fine. But to start off, I would just go in places where other people are doing it as well. And that gives you the peace of mind and knowing at least if they're comfortable out there, you're going to be comfortable. If you're seeing people riding four-wheelers and snowmobiles out there, then you're pretty safe. So to start off, early on with your ice considerations, just kind of read the area. You pull up to an area, boat launch or something like that, a common place where people will park to go out on the ice. Just take a look out there and see if anybody else is there. Okay.
Hey, Gary, I got something to add to that. I don't know if you have it.
Yeah.
Went up just creek mouths, river mouths, anywhere there's moving water meets ice is usually going to be your sketchier spots, and beware of like bubblers around docks and things like that to keep the water from freezing. Did I skip ahead?
No, thanks. Actually, that's another thing you want to look for too if you're going fishing is tracks. You can tell the difference in a foot track, and you can see when somebody's dragging a sled or something like that out of the back of their truck and going on the ice, and that's a pretty good indication that that's where you can walk and walk where other people walk. Don't try to venture out on a different path to go out on the ice, even if it is a bit longer to follow the beaten path. Usually that's the safest path when it comes to ice fishing. One of the things that you can do to I don't know, not curtail, but to protect yourself, say you want to give yourself an added layer of protection when you're out on the ice. The ice owls are one thing that are sold pretty much everywhere. Ice fishing equipment is sold. And what these things do is they help you, if you ever were to fall through the ice, they help you get out. Now, there's a ton of different products on the market for these. The ones I have kind of have a lanyard. You can see in this picture that the two ice owls have a rope, and the way I wear mine is I kind of put it over the back of my neck and they just drape down on my chest. Brett, what were those ones that you were wearing
They're made
the
by
other day? How did
they're made by HT. They've got like a little like an old school telephone cord, if anyone knows what a telephone on the wall used to look like, but it looks like that, and it connects the two, and it's kind of springy, and it's got some flexibility to it, so you can move it around and
right.
be comfortable.
So basically how these are marketed is that you have quick access, and if you ever were to fall through the ice, they help you get out. The biggest problem with ice rescue or anybody falling through the ice is, they don't drown immediately. You're just stuck there and you can't get out of the hole. And that's how everybody ends up, if they, don't make it, is right there on the edge. So what these things do is help you get out. I think, yes. Okay. So I have a video from work. It's a little grainy and not that great, but, there's a guy yelling at somebody in it, but it shows you how these things work. And I'm going to play it for you guys right now. Okay. Everybody seen the video? Brett, you seeing this?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Now, if you notice, he's grabbing on, he's trying to pull himself out, but it's not until he kicks his legs up there at the end that he's able to get out. And that's the biggest thing about getting out of the ice. If you ever do, I've I've never fallen through the ice. I've been on the ice for years and years and years. So I don't want everybody to think about that this is that you should be taking this into huge consideration when you're going ice fishing. I just want you to make sure you have in the back of your mind that if you are getting out of the ice, the biggest trouble is getting your legs out. I mean, think about when you're sitting there on the edge, your body's kind of in the shape of an L. So if you were to pull on that L, you're not going to get out onto the edge. You got to get your legs parallel with the ice, and then you can kind of drag yourself out. You don't really even need these, but these are a great tool to have in your back pocket.
Never hurts to have some rope with you as well, in case you got to throw it to somebody. Or
rope. You always want to have some sort of rope in your basket or in your sled. So if somebody goes down and you're within close proximity, you can just toss it to them. It's pretty easy to get out of the water, really, once you've done it a few times.
they make
those guys in those videos make it look easy because they're using dry suits, but honestly, you just got to stay calm and think about it, and you can get yourself right out, no problem. What's that, right?
Garrett, too, just another thing that I've always liked is a spud. That way you can keep an eye on the ice, you can poke it, you can check the distance, check the depth or the thickness, and have that just available to give you comfort.
Yeah, if you're not checking first ice with a spud bar, you're really taking a pretty big risk, especially on first ice of the year.
That's another great tool. They have a spud with you. If you're going out on the ice and you're not sure, even if you're seeing people out there, you can take the spud with you and you can kind of walk along and check the ice as you go. I'm not sure if everybody knows what a spud is, but it's kind of like a long pole with a kind of a chipper at the end. And you can actually use that to break through the ice instead of an auger. But what a lot of people will do is they'll keep one of them with them, and they'll kind of use that as they walk or check the ice in front of them as they're walking along. They'll be taking that spud, punching it down at the ice and looking and seeing if they're going right through. Usually, you're not going to punch right through in one shot if the ice is good. And also, it's weird that when you're using one of these, you can kind of hear how thick the ice is. You kind of get used to the sound of when that spud hits the ice, how thick it is. So it's good to have one of those with you too, just to make sure you're not getting into a bad ice situation. Let's see. So, another thing that goes along with ice safety is clothing and your clothing selection. And everybody, I'm sure here knows, we're all from New York, so we understand traditional layering and knowing, how to dress for the conditions that are out there every day. But now with the ice fishing, there's a whole bunch of new products out there, and they have this thing called float assist technology. So you can buy bibs and you can buy a coat that has basically it's kind of like a life jacket. I don't want to call it a life jacket because they won't call it a life jacket themselves. Probably legally speaking, they can't call it that, but they call it float assist technology. And basically the way all this clothing works is it doesn't retain water in your clothing. So your normal clothing that everybody wears is probably polypropylene or wool or something like that. And most of those materials are actually buoyant. When you think about it, you throw your coat on the water, it's not going to just sink. It's probably plastic mainly, and it's just going to hover there. But the problem is that if you fall to the ice and you have these clothings on, they soak up all the water. So you take your coat, which is, probably advertised as weighing ounces, and then all of a sudden you saturate it with water, and now it weighs pounds. And when you pick your arm up, you now have pounds of water above you pulling you down. That's how traditional clothing is not great if you get into the water. So all this float assist technology, basically how I understand it with this material is it's a lot of beaded, kind of like styrofoam insulation, and it doesn't hold water. And I mean, it's not a personal flotation device. They won't call it a PFD. But if you've ever seen any videos of people using this versus your regular clothing, it legit works. Now, you know, do you need this? Do you need to go out and buy float assist technology bibs and coat before you go ice fishing? I don't wear it, but I also don't go out on the ice until there's at least, you know, 4 to 6 inches out there either. So if you're doing everything right and you're being smart and you're using, you know, the buddy system, or you're making sure that there's other people out there fishing, you never would need this stuff. But it's also good to know that this stuff's out there. And if you wanted to push the boundaries, I'm sure a lot of the guys that are out there punching through the ice on the edge of big water are probably using stuff like this. So it's just another, you know, tool to have in your back pocket if you guys ever wanted to, you know, feel extra safe, or you know, go out on the edge of thin ice. So, and there's a million different products out there. I thought maybe I would try to show a few here tonight, but I don't know. You just go on Cabela's and half of them will advertise that as part of their ice fishing, you know, ice fishing bibs. Is they'll advertise float assist. It's not a PFD, but it's just float assist. Okay, so let me get away from that. Gone on forever about that one. Boots. I like myself a pair of slip-on, pair of muck boots, especially on the ice. There's going to be times if you get an ice fishing that there's a layer of water on top of the ice. So it's good to have a nice high pair of waterproof boots, and muck boots, lacrosse boots, anything that's waterproof is a great choice, something that's well insulated. On top of that with boots is a lot of other times there's not going to be any water and there's going to be glare ice. So you're going to want to have some sort of gripping or traction. So having a pair of yak tracks or something like that before you go ice fishing is really useful, especially, you know, you get out on glare ice and you're dragging your slide and you're slipping all over the place. It just helps you move along faster. I don't use yak tracks. I have a pair of corker, like for fly fishing soles that you can put on the bottom of your boots. They just last a lot longer, and corkers make those. The only problem with things like that, though, is they're quite a bit heavier than having just a pair of yak tracks on the bottom of your boots. Okay, regulations and etiquette. Let's talk about etiquette first. Everybody, I don't know, everywhere, no matter where you go, whether it's New York State or anywhere else, everybody has, like, there's unwritten rules, I guess you could say, about any piece of water or a riverbank or whatever. And it's hard to navigate stuff like that. So the best way that I found is to just give people room. So with ice fishing, you know, you're going to typically park at a boat launch or, you know, a state park or something like that. And then you're going to walk out on the ice from there. Just give people their space. Just try to gauge the situation, see how far everybody else is spacing out from each other. You know, you might not know where you want to go, but you're just going to kind of explore. So just give people their space. Don't set up right on them unless it's an area that, and there's some parts of the state where, like, let's say Black Lake, where people set up ice shanties right next to each other, and that's acceptable. But generally speaking, people don't want to be crowded. So when you're going on the ice, just kind of find a spot that's away from everybody and, set up there. Another thing that you're probably going to find out when you go out ice fishing is that once you do that, people are still going to come up to you and you're going to meet a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of people that want to help you. I think that's been my experience anyways, is I'll go out somewhere, I'll set up, I'll be, far away from everybody. Then, one of those other fishermen out on the ice will come up and introduce themselves, and, unintentionally, they're going to give you information. So I don't want you to think you need to avoid people, because people, honestly, other people fishing in these areas are probably your best resource to help you along. So, but you don't want to go, you don't want to go out and ask them for help. But it's almost like they're more apt to help you if you just kind of mind your business and they come along you and they just want to pass on. Everybody wants to pass on what they know with hunting and fishing and everything else. You just got to kind of find a way to get it out of people. And I think the best way to do it is to just mind your own business and, find your spot and let them come to you.
Yeah, it's important too, if you're running a set of tip ups, that you, even with your buddy or whomever you're out with, your pal, and you want to give each other some space, because you get a flag go off and you get a hot fish, you could be in for a real mess. It's happened before.
Right.
You get all tangled up.
Yeah.
So just give everybody some space, and usually plenty of water.
Yeah, take the long way around. If you're seeing another fisherman has their tip ups and a line, you don't want to walk through their line. It probably doesn't really make a difference, but it's just a little courtesy that, if you take the long way around and give everybody their space, that's gonna, earn you a little bit of respect. And then who knows, that fisherman might come up to you and give you a hot tip, for the next time you're out there. So just give everybody their space and let them come to you. So
Garrett's waters, right?
What's that?
Listen, don't fish your waters. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't come up this way. Don't just stay away from region 6. Okay. Don't even think about it. Okay. Regulations. So everybody has that freshwater fishing regulations that New York State publishes every year. So I am going to go to, I'm just going to go to the PDF version. Everybody can see this, right, Brett?
Yep.
Tony, you guys can see this?
Yep.
Okay. So this is page 13 of New York State's fishing regulations. All the statewide regulations are right here. So you can see basically on size and limit on everything and dates. So, but this is not the way it is everywhere. Every region and every water might be a little bit different. So we'll go on from page 13, and now it's showing special regulations. And here's all 3 regions. Starting off with region 1, here's all the special regulations for region 1, region 2, region 3. So let me just go to region 6, just to give you an idea how these will change sometimes. Okay, region 6, Nida County, Nida Lake. Okay. Here's a special regulation on Nida Lake from same size as the statewide regulation, but there, if you notice here, the daily limit is 3. Okay, so it says right here, Nida Lake east of Route 81 bridge and tributaries upstream, first barrier impassable by fish and barge, blah 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 blah. So that's just like one little thing that's different. And when you're getting ready to go fishing anywhere, you got to know the regulations, right? So that's how you do it. You go right here. So let's go back here real quick to the first one. Walleye. The state regulation is 5. So normally you can catch 5 walleye, but on a night of lake, there's a special regulation. So wherever you're going fishing, you're gonna have to look and make sure that there's no special regulations on what you can and can't do in those waters, and that's how you do it. First place to look, page 13 of the angling regulation book that New York State publishes, and then go to your specific waters. If it's not listed, if you're looking for a waters and you can't find it in the book, then you revert back to the statewide angling regulation, which is this one here on page 13. Another thing with regulations for ice fishing. So you're allowed 7 different lines in the water when you're ice fishing. Typically what everybody does is they usually have 6 tip ups and then 1 jigging rod. So that's, another thing that you're going to need to know when you're ice fishing is that you're allowed 7 different lines. I mean, I guess you could do 5 tip ups and you could run 2 jigging rods, 1 in each hand. But typically what everybody does is they run 6 step ups and 1 jigging rod. Do you guys have anything else on regs?
Yeah, one thing
that
that
I might be missing.
Yeah, one thing that's unique about ice fishing that's not legal during freshwater fishing season is the use of a gaff. So if you're catching some big toothy predators like pike, muskie, or anything, if you're kind of new around the hole or handling a fish, a gaff can be really helpful. I don't fish one; they're pretty aggressive, unless you're planning on keeping a fish. But they can be helpful, and they are legal during ice fishing, and they are not legal during freshwater. But check your regulations before you go out on it.
Cool. All right, let's see here. All right, so basic gear setup that you're going to need to go ice fishing. You're going to need some sort of auger. You have to get through the ice. That's step 1. You can use an auger. Like Tony was saying earlier, having a spud and using that to check your ice. Well, a spud initially is made for chipping through the ice, so you could actually technically use that to get through. But more traditionally, just to have an auger, electric or a hand crank. The fellas are going to get into that segment a little bit later. So you're going to need an auger. You're going to need to have tip ups and a jigging rod, and like we were saying earlier, usually probably 5 to 6 tip ups, and several different 1 or 2 jigging rods with you. You need a sled or a pack basket to carry all this stuff in. Tackle. This is talking about your hooks or jigs that you're going to have trying to catch the fish with. Line leader, usually with tip ups, you're using your main line, and then which is a braided cloth. I'm pretty sure it's cloth. I'm not sure, but it's a solid colored line, black or white. You're gonna have that attached to some leader, and then onto your hook, and that's how those work. So you're gonna need both the main line and have line leader with you. You're gonna need your tackle again. That's like your hooks and your sinkers and your jigs and stuff like that. A depth finder. Everybody usually runs a little depth finder. It's kind of like almost like a paper clip hook or a paper clip.
Alligator clip.
Alligator clip. That's good. Yeah, there you go. Alligator clip that you can clip onto your hook and then get an idea how deep where the bottom is when you're setting your tip ups or jigging, and then set up your tip up using that. Shelter, there's a million different options of shelters. You can go with a shelter that is incorporated in your sled and do a pop-up shelter that way, or you can have a pop-up shelter that's just a tent. Again, I think Tony's going to go over this with you a little bit later about all the options there. Bait box, another good thing. You want to have something good, because another thing that I should have talked about back in regulations is regulations with bait. Well, I'm not 100% sure on this, and hopefully Brett or Tony can help me out here, but you can't just bring bait, from anywhere. You have to have a receipt with you, and you have to have certified bait before you go fishing anywhere. So, that gets expensive when you're going to bait shops and stuff like that, especially if you're fishing for pike and stuff and you need bait. You want to make sure that you have a decent bait box, something that's going to keep the fish alive and, comfortable, and not in a crowded little space. So you're killing half of the bait before you even get to your fishing spot. So that's another thing you're going to need.
If I could add to that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead, Garrett.
No, I was just going to ask you, I tried to look it up the other night, but what's the regulation on bait? You have to buy bait. You can't catch your own bait anymore.
Tony, you know that I always buy bait, and I know it has to be certified. The bait shop has to provide you with a receipt. I have had my bait checked and by the DEC a number of times, and asked me for a receipt. So make sure you do have it on you. Don't leave it in your truck. Most of the time they're pretty cool. They'll let you walk back to your truck or something, but make sure you have it on you.
Yeah. So the whole idea behind this is from the grander scheme, if you want to know why they're doing that, is to inhibit invasive species. So, there's certain bait fish that are located on some of the inner waters that aren't, or more correctly, there's certain bait fish that's located on, let's say, Lake Ontario, that aren't located on some of the inner waters on some of the private or smaller ponds and such. So it's really important to make sure you're not bringing in invasive species to another body of water. And that's where a lot of this came from. Years ago, you used to see a lot of different type of bait fish at the bait shops. But they've gone away with a lot of those species because they aren't native to a lot of bodies of water that we fish. So that's why, I'd have to double check on catching your bait, Garrett. I guess the challenge I would say is how you're going to prove that.
Yeah.
But a receipt from a bait shop is basically a staple. You're going to have that to show if any DC officer or any they request that's what they're going to look for, and that's primarily to avoid invasive species going into bodies of water that they shouldn't be.
Right. Yep. So,
if I could just
bottom line.
Yeah, some of this gear and
bottom
stuff.
Line,
go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry. There's a delay. Sorry, buddy.
Bottom line, you keep your receipt for your bait, so that way you can prove where you have it if you're using bait. You don't have to, but pretty effective tool for ice fishing is using live bait. Go ahead, Brett. What were you gonna ask?
A lot of this stuff can get really expensive. I mean, an auger is a huge expenditure to take on, unless it's like a hand auger or something. But you do need an auger eventually in your life if you're going to be serious about ice fishing. You get your set up quicker than your buddies when you get out. And the other thing is, if you don't have one, and you do have a spud bar, if you know a popular hot spot that was hit very hard the day before, you can go there with your spud bar the next day and open up a few holes and you're fishing again. So you should get an auger eventually, but don't let it prohibit you from going fishing if you do have a piece of rebar or something that you can open up a hole.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you want to get even more basic, like Brett's saying, you could just have yourself a little pack basket. You can have your spud bar and a jigging rod, and that's basically it. And you can go around. especially when you get into some areas where it's pretty popular. You can just go around and chip out old holes and jig down those old holes and catch a bunch of perch or whatever you're after, and just move around a lot if you want to get into a lightweight, cheap and easy way. But when you get into lightweight and things like that, you got to wait for the conditions to be right. So, my wife and I, when we go, we kind of set a date, and no matter what's going on that day, we're going. And that's what's nice about having a shelter when you're going ice fishing, where if it is a day when you get out there and it's 5 degrees and nobody wants to get out of the shelter, you have that little sanctuary to go back to. But if you want to, if you have a lot of time on your hands and not a lot of money, you can get away with just having a jigging rod and maybe not even a basket. You can have a backpack and just have the spud with you, and you can just go around to these popular places where you see people fishing all the time, and you can chip out old holes and catch perch or crappie or whatever type of panfish all day long. You don't have to get this deep into it with this gear that we have selected, but if you're going to go out there on your own in places where you don't need an old hole or whatever, you're going to need pretty much everything that we have listed here for you.
And I'm not working for them, and I don't plug them. I'm not plugging them or whatsoever. But there's a company in Albany called Fish 307. So they're New York based. They're online. I believe it's fish307.com, and you just get your stuff quicker. So they've got a pretty good selection.
Yeah, getting a bunch of text messages. All right. This is what I was afraid of. Oh my God. None of these things are
so
come over my phone in minutes. Okay, so the drag, choosing the spot. Everybody's going to team up on this one, and I'm going to pass it off to Brett and Tony after this. But just before I go, choosing a spot, there's a million different resources out there. Even Onyx Maps that everybody knows about is a great place to look. Well, some of the things that you're looking for when you're trying to find a spot is public access areas like boat launches. Again, you're just going to want to look and see if you're in an area where the water freezes. Do you see ice shanties out there on the water? Then you're going to be like, oh, okay, I see people out there fishing, there's got to be a way. So just do a little research on things like Onyx. This fishing regulation PDF doesn't have the maps that it used to. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe that's in hunting regs where it has like basically a blown up version of each DEC region, and you can look right on there and it's showing you where state boat launches are, and that's another place that you can look for that's free to you. Just go right on in New York State DEC's website and download I guess it would be the hunting regulation book, and it will give you a blown up version of all the state lands and boat launches in New York State. So that's one of your resources. Also, if you get online, you can just Google New York State DEC boat launches, and there's a whole list by county of every New York State boat launch. And if you're curious about your area, just go right to Google and find your county and look and see if you recognize any of the areas on that are listed for that county. And chances are, if the water freezes there, that's a place where people are going to go to park, to go out on the ice. Another good thing that you might want to do is you can download, just like Onyx Maps, there's apps out there for fishing maps, water contours of the water, and the Aqua Maps is one of them. And you can go on there, and that's also going to show you where some of your boat launches are. And another good choice, because you can see what the areas are that you're fishing, see what the depths are and stuff like that. So, okay, I'm going to hand it off to these two guys, and you guys can continue on this.
One resource that I really like to use is this website called iceshanty.com. It's a pretty unique resource. You can go to your state and you can select a number of different bodies of water by region. There's a reports and conditions page, which people will, say, hey, I was out yesterday, fishing was slow, but there was 6 inches of ice. So if you're ever looking to stretch your legs or see new water, or, not want to burn a whole bunch of gas getting all the way out there and you see open water, you can kind of give yourself a heads up idea of who has ice. And if that area has ice, usually areas around that will have ice. So I usually I don't take their word for it. You got to check yourself with your own eyes and use your own judgment, but it's a pretty good resource to try. And I like to move around. I don't like to see the same thing every time. So I like to bump around the Finger Lakes and whatnot. So I really rely on that resource quite a bit.
Yeah, there's definitely other websites too, like ice fishing reports based on different bodies of water. Some bodies of water have their own web page too. So the internet's got a lot of resources you can lean on to kind of get a fishing report. I know personally, if I'm going to a new spot, I like to find the closest bait and tackle shop. I'll give them a call, before I even go out there. They're also going to give you a good update on ice thickness, and if they can get it out of the other anglers as they're coming in, some of the spots that are being productive, they get a lot of customers coming through that are fishing those bodies of water, and a lot of the bait and tackle owners and employees ask a lot of questions, and they're usually pretty helpful, especially if that means you're gonna get down there and purchase some of their bait and tackle from them. So I like to start with the local bait and tackles. They're also going to tell you your good access points, for public boat launches if it's something that you're not familiar with, and they'll tell you if it costs money. So bait and tackle shops are usually a really good place to go. Additional applications are, I like Navionics. It's a free app. You can also get like the pro version and pay, $14 a year or whatever it is. But it also shows, boat launches, water depth contour, and things of that nature. And so between those two, I usually don't go any farther than bumping into people in the parking lot and asking them how they did and seeing if they'll be friendly enough to give you some more information. But between a bait shop, the internet, there's even on the DEC website, certain bodies of water, you can open up those specific lakes on their website, and they'll have little bullet points. This spot's good for bass. This spot's good for perch. It's pretty high level, but it's a good place to start. If you're unfamiliar with the body of water.
Absolutely. And just don't ever go into a bait shop and ask them where the fish are at, because they won't give you a good answer. Ask them what kind of water are the fish holding in? What's the hot jig? What's the hot bait?
Yeah.
Ask specific questions. I've heard that all, and they'll give you a cockamamie response. So ask good questions.
All right, I think we can. Yep, there we go. Augers.
Was that me?
Yeah. Why don't you take that, Brett?
All right. So I'm going to talk about the sizes of augers. If you're pan fishing for perch, bluegills, crappie, stuff like that, you'll typically want to fall into a 4 to 6 inch hand auger range. It's a little bit of a lighter approach to ice fishing. You're typically moving around a lot. You're looking for schooling fish, structured, depth changes, stuff like that. They're really, really nice. They always start. You never have to carry a can of gas. You never smoke out your shelter. They're kind of a nice minimalist approach. You drill quick holes with them. So if you want to just test a hole real quickly to see how deep ice you got, you can do it and move along. The next size range up is typically the 8 to 10 inch range. People select these when they're targeting pike, tiger muskie, walleye, lake trout, your bigger, toothier fish. I prefer a 10-inch auger. You can kind of do anything with it. You can jig, set tip ups, it makes landing fish around the hole a lot easier. And I hate to catch your personal best fish and only see its face. So make sure you got a good, if you're fishing with the appropriate size auger. You probably want to pike fish with a 4-inch auger. Walleye is like the 6 to 8 range usually. Pike is usually typically just 10 or 8, but that's a good place to start. Augers are typically powered by hand, gas, propane, and the latest thing that's out there is that people are making these setups for your cordless drills, and they're super lightweight. You can screw your ice shack screws down with it. It's secure your ice shanty, so you kind of get a dual purpose out of it. Tony, you got anything to add on augers?
Yeah, I mean, really just if you're looking at, you know, I've had it happen to me. You know, have a 4-inch hole and you got a nice pike on there, and you're trying to thread that pike through that hole. It's not nice. But if you're looking for a hand tool, you know, a hand auger, the smaller the diameter of the hole, the easier it is going to be to cut. You know, I've just this year, I went and bought one of those drill attachments. And I mean, personally, you know, I already had the drill, so I had that investment in the bank. But those drill attachment augers, you know, I've grown quite fond of those. But I still keep, you know, my 4-inch hand auger too. It's nice to be able to carry that, because when the batteries get cold on those drills, you know, it gets harder to drill.
Absolutely. Just a few tips. Take care of your blades. They're expensive. They're sharp. They will cut you. They will cut you badly. So just be careful. Make sure you put the protective guard on it. They typically don't sell them. It's like an accessory. They make you buy it. So when you buy it, make sure you buy the guard for it if it doesn't come with it. Keep your blades dry. When you get home, dry them off before you store it, and keep a light coat of oil on them when not in use or in the off season. And if you're running a gas auger, make sure you're using non-ethanol fuel in that thing, because it's probably going to be sitting for like 6-7 months of the year. So there's nothing more frustrating than not be able to drill a hole when you first get out. So
yeah, and a good point on that, which you just reminded me of, you know, you see a lot of people, they'll cut their hole and then they'll pound their auger on the ice to try to knock some of the ice and dirt off, or the ice and water off. You know, those blades on the end are just knife blades. You know, you wouldn't want to be pounding your, you know, a nice knife on the ice just to get the snow and ice off. You know, just take good care of them, because when they get dull, you know, you're either going to have to buy new ones or take them off and sharpen them. So just that's a good point. Just keep an eye on the blades. You know, treat them like a good knife that you want to take care of, and they should last you a long time.
Yeah, and if they get rusty, they won't cut as well either. So it's really a expensive tool, so treat it like it.
Yeah, and one of the questions, you know, that was brought up was, you know, what is one of the best, cheapest auger? You know, there's so many brands out there. Obviously, your cheaper ones are going to be the hand augers. You know, you don't have an additional item, a motor or anything on. I mean, I'll be honest with you, up until the drill attachment that I bought this year, all of my augers have been yard sale augers. You know, typically, you know, a lot of people don't realize that once the blades get dull on a lot of the brands, you can take those blades off and sharpen them. So they end up selling them in their yard sale or giving them away. So really, as long as you just take good care of it, you know, they're whatever the investment might be, they'll last a long time. But makes brands, what's best, what's easiest, you know, it all depends on your budget. But if I were going to start and it was the right time of year, I'd be leaning towards yard sale augers, because I've got an auger that I still have that I paid $2 for, you know, 10 years ago. It's a hand auger, and new blades, we're good to go.
And you know, and Craigslist and all the forums are a pretty good place too. I mean, guys buy things, and I mean, people buy things. Everybody buys things to get into a jam, and they got to liquidate what they got. So usually you can find some deals online, and Craigslist, Facebook forums, and stuff like that.
Yep. Most augers too are going to be 2-stroke. So you can go and buy the oil and mix the gas up yourself. But honestly, the best way is to just buy the fuel in a can. You see a lot of like Home Depot or Lowe's, they sell premix. They sell 50 to 1, 40 to 1 premix non-ethanol fuel. So just figure out what your auger takes and buy that stuff. It's got a 30-year shelf life. You don't have to worry about ethanol. You don't have to worry about mixing it. And, you buy one can and it'll probably last you several years.
There's still a question about sharpening.
That's a good point.
Sorry,
Yeah, that's a good point too on the gas. Make sure you're looking at that, because not everything's 50 to 1 ratio.
Not everything.
I was given a gas auger. I know now why I was given it, but it's a big old clunky thing. But that was like 24 to 1 ratio. So just make sure you're looking at that. Not everything's going to be the same 50 to 1. There's 40 to 1. There's other ratios. So if you do get a gas, just keep an eye on what, if it's new and you can get the owner's manual, just make sure you're putting the right premix in it.
Yep. If it's a lot of times it'll be on the cap around where you're putting the fuel in. It'll tell you what the fuel ratio is to on any 2-stroke. So
there was a question about sharpening. Sharpening them can be pretty dangerous. You almost need like a jig to hold them, and I really don't have the first clue on how to sharpen. I know that Fish 307 sharpens them. You can send them your blades and they'll send them back to you sharpened. It's a pretty delicate process because it's gonna have the balance. It's like a drill bit. So you really got to have both blades sharpened almost perfectly even, I believe, for it to function correctly or function to its optimal ability. So, and they're sharp. You got to be careful with those things.
All right, good. Yeah, I mean, I sharpen mine with a whetstone. It is cumbersome. I'm a tool maker and everything, so I'm pretty particular with dial calipers to make sure they're the same thickness. But a lot of times it's for how long they last. A lot of times it's pretty easy just to go and buy a set of replacement blades.
I completely agree.
All right, shelters. So, we talked a little bit about that already. There's a plethora of shelters out there. You've got the flip-up shelters that are built into the sled. You can see on the picture on the screen, the one on the far left is just a flip-up shelter. Each one of these has their pros and cons. You've got a flip-up shelter, and then the one on the top is like a pop-up tent. The nice thing about that is you can get larger size tents. They tend to fit into a duffel bag size bag. You can throw it on your sled and pull it out, but you got to pop it up. There's no weight to it, so you have to anchor it down. And then you see them in a lot of the ponds and lakes around. You'll see a lot of people have their own homemade shelters. Make sure you're following the local regulations, because you can't just go throwing a homemade shelter out there and thinking you're all set with that. New York State requires a lot of information to be posted on that, name, address, phone number, things of that nature. And there are certain times of year that you can have them out there, and then there's a certain time of the year you have to make sure that you get those permanent structures off the ice. But if you live somewhere nearby a body of water and that's something that you wanted to do, that's always an option. You look on the internet, you can see a huge array of some very intense permanent ice shelters. If you Google anything Minnesota ice hut, you'll see some pretty lavish permanent structures that make ice fishing almost look a little too comfortable. And then if you're like me, I've got a big family. I usually bring a big pop-up hut. I try to get the whole family out, and usually there's no room for me in the hut. So I'm usually the one that's outside fishing without it. So, I've done that for years with just a bucket and the sled. So, to think that, you need to have a shelter to go ice fishing. You absolutely don't. I have a shelter and I still don't get to use it. But it has a shelter is very nice, depending on what the weather is, because a shelter doesn't necessarily matter what the weather is. You can flip it over, and turn your heater on and go from there. But you definitely don't need a shelter to get started. And personally, I prefer not to be held down with a shelter. It's nice to have it for a heat source and kind of a hub and whatnot. The flip ups are nice because they're easy to move. But the way I like to fish and jig is I'm constantly moving and trying to catch the fish or find them as they're moving through the water column. You guys have anything else on shelters?
I saw plenty of guys out last weekend using their turkey blinds, so we don't let it stop them from getting out.
So jig fishing, that's something that I really like to do. Just kind of a picture there to show, you've got really short 24-inch jig poles all the way up to 47, 48-inch jig poles, depending on what you're fishing for. I tend to range, around the 28 to 36, just because I'm not specifically targeting, 20-pound Lakers, yet, that might be in the future. But, the big thing with jigging poles is try to tailor it towards your fish, because there isn't going to be, the perfect jig pole that you're going to be able to use for crappie and perch, and then also be able to turn around and routinely land, large pike and muskies and bigger toothy species on. It can be done, but I know the big thing with jigging, especially during this time of year when a lot of the fish are finicky, I try to lighten my line. I'm going real light line for the perch, and I'm constantly changing my jig, to try to entice them to bite. And there's other times where I'm specifically going for pike. I'd like to have a heavier line, a little more backbone in the jig pole. Doesn't need to have as much finesse on the tip. The big thing with fishing for perch and crappie and panfish is during this time of year, they're not always going to be real aggressive. They're not always going to come right in and just take your lure and run. A lot of times they're going to tickle it. They're going to come up. They're going to nudge it. They're going to be real ginger with it. And if your pole's too stiff to see that real subtle bite that you could have missed or that you might have missed, there's a good chance you're not going to be hooking into the smaller pan fish as much as you'd like to. I don't know if we have a slide on tackle or not, but really you can't go wrong with any kind of small jig, small lure, small flashers. They've got an endless supply of options out there. I was just talking to the guys before the call started. I was running just a small flasher style jig for perch, and ended up catching a beautiful steelhead on. So this time of year, the fish tend to be a little slower, a little more lethargic. You're still going to get some aggressive days, aggressive bites, but usually I like to go a little smaller and try to work my way in. One of the things I also really like to do is I like to start out with a noisy bait, and I primarily fish, panfish, perch, crappie. What I like to do, is almost call them in. So you get a real noisy bait like a rattle jig or a jig and wrap or a buckshot. There's a lot of smaller lures that are heavier. They have a little rattle inside them. I like to start with that to try to call them in. It seems to work really well for me, where I'll drop that noisier bait, rattle it, do an obnoxious jig with it, not even expecting anything to bite, but a really noisy, really fast, really obnoxious jig. And a lot of times, you know, I use electronics. A lot of times you'll start to see fish showing up. You've got a really aggressive fish, they'll hit it. But if not, you know, I'll reel it up, put a smaller jig on, drop that down, a little more finesse. And I found that combination to be pretty helpful for me. You guys have anything else on jig poles, jigging?
Just that there's varying degrees of actions, like your smaller panfish, you're gonna want like the ultra light or the lighter ranges. And then if you're fishing for trying to jig up walleye or lake trout or something like that, you might want to go up into the medium or maybe a tick heavier. So
Yeah.
Yep, spring bobbers, exactly.
Yep.
Ultralight. Okay, so tip up fishing, next slide. So your first tip up there you see on your left, there's names for all of this stuff. This is just what I call them. That's like a wood or a cross type tip up. They typically sit up high off the ice. So if you're fishing somewhere where you get a lot of snow, the snowmobiles can see them. People aren't going to drive over them. They're pretty visible. They also have typically the larger spools on them. So guys for fishing for pike typically tend to use those because you can fit larger spools than the other types. The next tip up is what I call a polar tip up or a flat tip up. Those are nice. Those are usually fish for guys for fishing walleye because you can adjust the sensitivity on them. There's two grooves on the top, thinner groove and a deeper groove. So you can adjust it based on your sensitivity. Also, it's a very windy day. You can kind of bury the flag on those. So the wind won't trip them or get what you call a false flag and you run over there and there's nobody home. The next tip up is called a polar thermal tip up. The neat thing about that is that it's got a couple inches of foam or an inch and a half of foam on it. So your hole will not freeze up and there's less maintenance going, less time going out and checking the holes if they've frozen over. Up in the upper right-hand corner is what they call a tip down. That's typically used by pan fishermen, primarily perch fishermen, usually fishing minnows. They'll usually set those in a little circle or a little set where it's visible. So when the tip falls down, when a fish comes by and grabs the bait, tip of the rod will tip down and you know that's been triggered. You go over there and run and grab the rod. The next thing is called a quick strike rig or a jaw jacker. We were talking before, we've all got a buddy that swears by these things but never catches anything on them. There's pins, they're clunky. You pin drop your bait in the hole and you set your rod tip down. When a fish grabs it, it triggers the rod tip, slamming it up and then setting the hook for you on a fish. It seemed like it'd be a really fun on a heavy rod for pike or a laker or something, but other than that, they're not my thing. Anything on tip up fishing for anybody else?
Yeah, some more pros and cons on all the different ones. So the polar ones, the second one to the right, Tony and I can personally attest that I never had a problem until the other day we went fishing, but you can lose these. If it's snowing pretty good, you can lose these. And the problem with these is that they have a low profile. They set up quick and easy and they're great. And I love them and I wouldn't use anything else. But if it's snowing, if you're getting, any amount of snow, you can cover your hole and you can cover up these things. And if it wasn't for this little point right down here that I'm trying to zoom in on, that little point down there, the very top of the main stem on my tip ups is orange. And I caught a look at that and I found one because I lost one the other day when we went fishing. And same thing with the third one to the right. It's basically the same premise as the second one to the right. It's just covers up the whole hole. But if it's not sprung, I mean, the profile on the ice is only a few inches off the ice. So, if you're getting 1, 2, 3 inches of snow, these things can be covered up and you might not have any idea where they are. So that's the cons to them. The pros are they're really simple to set up and they're really easy to use. So I kind of take them for the pros over their cons.
My favorite's the left style, the wood style. There's a brand called Heritage, Laker tip ups. They're made in Maine. They're pretty expensive. They're made in the United States. They'll last you a lifetime if you take care of them. Sometimes you can find them.
Are they wooden?
They,
Are they wood?
yeah, they're wood. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're spendy, but you just ask Santa to put a tip up in your stocking next year. So,
It seems like anything that's made of wood seems to be better, in my opinion, with ice fishing. Because
Yeah.
I have,
even the trigger,
I even have the others. Yeah.
not cheap pot metal, you know, it's really nice. They're really well constructed. But the LLB tip up,
Yeah.
and they call them fish traps up there, not tip ups.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
and you know, if they could have the pro of the wooden style, the cross tip up, you know, I really like the spool direction. You know, it's an overtop spool, so you know, as the line's pulled down, it's pulled like this. You know, and put that on the convenience of the plastic where that spins outwards. You know, you put a little side tension on those, and if you don't adjust the windage, you can have a bird's nest. But really, you know, any of them, they'll all work. And especially if you're Garrett, make sure you're keeping an eye on the wind drifts and the snow, because they can disappear pretty quickly.
Yeah. That goes with all of them, probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
any tip up, if it's the conditions are tough, you know, you can lose track of them. It's you know, when you're setting them up and you're drilling your holes, it's also kind of good to get into a you know, routine of how you do it. So yeah, straight line, a staggered line, whatever. You have a general idea. You can look at the rest of your tip ups to get an idea where the missing tip up is. So, okay.
All right, so fish finders and cameras. You know, this goes with pretty much everything. You know, you don't need one of these to go fishing. And you know, if you look at a lot of the flashers and a lot of the high-end cameras, or the finders and cameras, they're not cheap. But there are a lot of great features to them as well. You know, I don't know. I don't know how many times before buying electronics, I'd cut a hole, I'd jig, no fish. You know, there's not a single fish down there. And then once I got the electronics, you know, you cut a hole, you jig. Now they almost make you upset, because now you know there's fish down there, they're just not biting. You know, so it has its pros and cons, but it's helped me quite a bit. You know, to at least know that the fish are down there. You can kind of see their reaction to the lure. You can see if they're aggressive, are they chasing? You know, I use it a lot to swap my lures and jigs as well. You know, I'll send something down, I'll see a lot of fish, it'll bring a lot of traction. Nothing's really biting it, nothing's really chasing. You know, that's usually an indication. I'll swap my jig, try something smaller, bigger, different color, whatever it might be. But there's a plethora of electronics out there. Each one with a pro and con. You know, the flashers, I guess the biggest con is they're not cheap. You know, you're not going to find a cheap flasher. You know, that's the camera in the middle. But the pro on those are they're really accurate. You know, you can really adjust a lot of the dials. You can adjust the gain. You can adjust the interference. You know, which will give you more or less detail on what's below you. You've got the video cameras, where you drop something down, drop your camera lens down. The con with that is, you know, now you've got something all the way down at whatever depth you're fishing. So it's just a potential catch-all, something that your fish, once you hook in, they can get caught up around. You know, again, kind of like Brett said, I'm not endorsed in any way, but you know, a lot of the regular fish finders, you know, I've got a Garmin, you know, Striker fish finder. I use it both ice fishing and regular fishing. You know, I made a little contraption so I can mount it on an ammo can and use it for ice fishing, and then detach it and put it in my canoe to go regular fishing with. You know, personally, if I were to say anybody was going to start and you wanted to get in electronics and you couldn't find a deal on Craigslist or any of the websites or yard sale, you know, looking at, you know, one of the smaller 4-inch screen regular fish finders, they almost all of them have you know, an ice setup, so you can get the fish finder mounted in this little setup. They all have ice transducers if you want. You know, I personally don't have an ice transducer. Some of the issues with that is it's got to be perfectly parallel with the ground or with the ice, because if it's offset a little bit, it's going to send that sonar cone and it's going to give you misreadings. But like I said, I invested in mine. You know, I think it was about under $200. But I use it for both regular fishing and ice fishing. You know, you see a lot of the videos now on YouTube and on the web. It's really neat to see how the fish react. So those video cameras have a lot of pros to them, to really be able to learn habits and you know, how a fish reacts to different jig movements and such. But personally, if I YouTube it and see somebody else and see how the fish reacts, you know, I think that's just an educational purpose. But each one of them are great. You know, they all have their pros and cons. It wasn't until last year, you know, I've never fished with electronics. Always done well as long as the fish are biting. And now I joke, I have an electronics now. I don't necessarily do better or worse, but now I know there's fish down there, and that doesn't mean that they're going to bite. I can see the depth, I can see the fish. So they're really helpful, but you know, if you're just getting into it, you know, it's not a necessity.
Yeah, the cameras are really fun. It's like watching fish TV for 6 hours, and you can see you can see a school of perch and a pike come in, all the perch boogie. And some of the downsides to it, though, is you got that camera, but you're dropping down to the floor, so you're kind of limited to how deep a water you can fish. And also, if you, for instance, last week we were jigging perch and a pickerel came in and smashed my friend's jig. You've got a cable down there, so you got that fish can get. So the minute that happens, if you're fishing with other people with the camera, everyone's line's got to come out of the water. The camera's got to come out of the water, especially if you've got a big hefty fish on there. So, but there's pros and cons. It was pretty fun fishing over it all day long, until that happened.
Yeah. Well, then the other thing too with cameras is, you know, you look at this image on the right, chances are it's not going to look that crystal clear.
Oh, it does.
when you get it set up. Yeah. Unless you're fishing in, you know, the Great Lakes or the St. Lawrence, where the water's really clear, it's going to be pretty murky looking. You know, you're going to have a, you know, in some cases, a vague idea that there's a fish there. So I don't know. Personally, I think the flasher is probably the top choice for experienced ice fishermen. They're going to be using the flasher.
Yeah, and I mean, there's other technology out there now, like Panoptics. You're looking at big money, but I mean, you can actually project not just down but out with the Panoptics, so you can actually, you know, cut a hole, put it down, point your Panoptics in that direction, and you can see if there's any fish over there, you know, up to like 40 feet, 50 feet, and then spin it and actually do a panoramic of the ice. So there's a lot of great technology out there. You know, I think the flasher, or like I said, that Garmin has a flasher feature built into it. It's a really good entry level fish finder if you were looking to get something.
I don't think for the money that Garmin 4 can be beat.
No, that Garmin Striker 4, again, like I said, I'm not getting anything from this, but for under $200, it's very hard to beat.
And look for the ice combo kit if you're going to buy one.
Yep.
Because you get that bag.
The bag and the ice transducer, which makes life a lot easier.
Okay, that's all of our death by PowerPoint. So now's the time that we're going to open up to everybody here to ask questions. Let's see. Gary, you still there?
I am, and if you can see the chat, there might be a few
Yeah, I wasn't able
unanswered
to.
questions
Wasn't
still
able
in the
to.
chat.
Because,
Say again.
all right, I'm going to go to the chat now.
Yeah, so I think we tried to answer some of them as we went along. It looks like maybe the most recent one was like hook size. What are the hook size people are using for panfish, rainbows, browns? What about you guys, Garrett? You know, what kind of hook size do you like to use? Not necessarily just hook size, but maybe jig size.
I like to fish tiny micro tungsten jigs a lot. They're kind of expensive. They stink. It stinks when you lose one. If something toothy comes along, but they help you get down the water column quick. I don't know exactly what size they are, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, for me, jig size, yeah, just ultra small. Anything, because most times I'm looking for perch or bluegills or crappie. But for the regular size, for pike, I'm usually using 6s or 8 treble hooks. One question I see here from Katrina, I think, says, what areas should be considered for thinner ice, even when there are ample ice in others? What do you mean by that?
I know Brett.
Gary,
I know Brett kind of covered it a little bit. I think she was talking about, if you've got a body of water that's got 6 inches of ice, there are tendency to be spots that it's not going to be perfectly 6 inches across that whole body of water.
Okay.
Brett brought up, look around docks. If a lot of people who have docks that leave them in year round, they can put a bubbler out there just to keep from ice damaging their docks. Be careful, be cautious of that. It really helps to have a local or again, maybe the bait shop, because some bodies of water have a moving current. There might be a channel or moving water under there. Wherever there's moving water, whatever there's disturbance, you can have thinner ice. Near creek entries, where we went last weekend on the pond, the closer you get to the lake, you've got a lot of water moving in there. You're going to have thinner ice near that. And also during, especially earlier in the year, along the shoreline, you can see some thinner ice. A skim ice is going to accumulate on the main body of water. And if it hasn't quite frozen, it can move a little bit because that's going to float with the water like a bobber. And towards shore, you can see thinner ice. Another thing is stress cracks, because if it does get windy, you can see stress cracks start to form, and there could be varying ice depth, ice thickness near stress cracks. Is there anything else you can think of? Those are the things that I look at whenever I'm trying to gauge
Anywhere there's
ice thickness.
a creek or a channel or any kind of water, moving water, just like Tony said, anytime you get moving water or something like that, like a bubbler or anything, that and shore ice is usually one of the first things that goes in some places. You'll go to a place that'll be like, someone will have an old wood ladder that they'll throw out there so people can walk over it, or a sheet of plywood or something so you can drag over it. So just be careful, be smart. Fish fries are cheap. saw a line about what line are you putting on tip ups. I don't know what we call it, squid line. I don't know where my cousin taught me how to ice fish when I was a kid. I don't know where he got that line. If they actually make it, it's like a backing, what you have like on a fly rod or something like that. It's like a heavy, thick board. I typically run that to a swivel to anywhere from typically 20-pound test. We'll get cocky sometime and try to bring it down, but we usually end up losing gear. Usually on number 4 treble hook for pike. If you're running pike bait.
Yeah, and I know I recently, you'd buy the steel leaders. They've always seemed pretty heavy to me, pretty visible. I've ended up buying really thin steel line and using that, tying my own leaders and tying that up to like Brett said, it's a tip up line. It's specifically made for tip ups. It's thicker. It's easier on your hands because you're going to be hand lining a fish. You don't want a really thin, really, I guess you could say sharp line. You want something that's a little beefier so you can hold on and hand line that fish in. But it also depends too. All my tip ups always have that tip up line, the squid line, whatever you want to call it. And then it just depends on what I want to set my tip up for. Am I going to run a steel leader for pike? Am I going to run, 10-pound, 20-pound leader fluorocarbon for walleye? Or am I going to run a 4-pound leader for perch? Tip ups don't have to just be for big predator fish. You can also run them for panfish too.
Yeah, and that tip up line is important too. And I saw someone asked if they could use braid. I personally wouldn't use braid. You can lose a finger, that stuff's pretty, especially if a fish takes you on a run. And then when you're pulling that line, that squid line, I call it, or that tip up line out on the ice, try to do it sort of methodically. Just don't be stripping, like a mad person and get it everywhere. Because if that fish takes you on another run, you got to be prepared for that line to go back down the hole again. So just kind of be aware and cognizant of what's going on with it. It's kind of crazy. I mean, they'll be so excited, and it's a lot of fun, but just try to kind of have a little bit of control and a little bit of method when you're doing it.
Guy went in the ice on my lake last year, about 50 yards from a dock to the bubbler. I see that from Greg. Yeah, those things are pretty effective.
Oh yeah.
Again, read the ice. When you're going on the ice, if you see a wet patch, stay away from that. If you see once you get out away from shore, stay away from shore. There's no reason to go back in. Zigzag around. Take the most direct route that you can to wherever you're thinking you're fishing, and then when you come back, go the way you came. Follow the same route back. Just some simple basic steps to being safe out there when you're on the ice.
There was a question that says 2 more. No, that's from the Instagram. It says the tip up set up for 40-inch pike club. How to do a DI quick strike rig. Our rule for big pike is big bait. If you go to the bait shop, look for the biggest bait you can get. Try to get the biggest minnows the guys got, because you'll kind of weed out some of the smaller fish. There's pickerel in there. You'll kind of weed some of those guys out. So bigger the bait, bigger the fish. That's my opinion.
40-inch club for pike.
I've never.
I don't know. I think to get into the 40-inch club for pike, you just gotta spend a long time fishing, and then eventually it'll just happen. But I don't know. Tony's got a crazy method for his pike tip ups. He's smashing, like he's putting 3 fish on the hook to get them. So maybe he's got a good one.
No, so I've caught some good pike. One of the big things is I don't know how many times I've had my bait gone by the time I go and check the line, check the flag. I've kind of figured out, don't tell my daughter, but I steal her little hair rubber bands for her hair, and I use those to actually keep the big bait on. So that way they really got to take it in order to get that fish ripped off the hook. Because a lot of times that's, you know, one of the big flaws is you'll start to pull if you start pulling your fish on, especially pike. What they like to do is they like to mouth it, and then they'll take it and they'll run with it. You know, they might just grab it by the tail or by the head. They'll take it a ways and then they'll stop, and then they'll actually eat the fish. And at that point, if you don't already have a hook into them, if you're pulling before he fully bit that fish, you're pulling the hook right out of the minnow, and now he's got a free meal. So I like to put a rubber band on just to keep him on. And then on one of the trebles, I take you know, a fat head or a shiner, smaller minnow. I'll head hook it and then mush it. You know, it gives a little more flavor, a little more scent in the water, and seems to work pretty well.
Some new messages.
So
Tony, you
I
want to
guess,
answer that one?
yeah, the jig one.
Yeah, it says ice fishing rods or rods and reel combos can range from 20 to 180. What should you consider within this range?
Personally, I like to feel the tip. You know, you got to see what kind of flexibility there is in the tip. I like to have a more sensitive tip, but most of the time, I mean, if you were to look at my rod reel combo, and if there was a rod reel combo in my ice fishing setup that was more than $20, I'd be surprised. You know, and I seem to do well with it. You know, a lot of it is just the sensitivity. You know, you can get a cheaper ugly stick Shakespeare jig and pole with a good flex for $10, and then a $5-10 reel. Personally, if I was going to spend money, I would be spending it on the reel. You know, you want a good reel, something that's got good drag. The drag's not going to stick. It's got good bearings. If I were to spend money on something, it would be on the reel, not necessarily the pole itself.
I agree.
Yeah, one good thing about when you're looking at jigging rods is, you know, a lot of the tip up rods are just traditional spinning reels. So you're just opening up the bail and letting them dump all the way down till they stop. But some of the jigging rods you can get where you can kind of, it's almost like a bait caster. I don't even know what the proper name of the reel would be, but you just open it. Yeah, just like on my reels, I release it and the bail or the reel spins, and then when it stops, it's there. It's not like opening a bail on a spinning rod where you're opening up the bail and you're watching your line kind of fall out in spirals. Mine comes off, the whole reel spins. And a lot of those get kind of expensive when you're looking at them online, but I remember the ones I bought, they weren't, I doubt they were over $50 a piece.
Yeah.
And,
no, those like gravity ones, those are
yeah,
nice.
people look at them like,
straight.
oh man, you got the big dollar ones. And I'm thinking, no, I don't think I did. I think I bought just the cheapest version of this type of reel that I could find, and they work great.
No, but that brings up a good point too. If you do have like a standard spinning reel setup, you know, once you reel that and it gets wet and it's out in the cold, that line does gain a bit of a memory, and that's when you're going to see that curly cue line. You know, when you're trying to let it out, you've got all that little curly cue on your spool because it gets wet, it gets cold, it freezes, and then you thaw it out. You know, and that it gains a little bit of a memory, and that's how you get that coil. I find myself quite often, you know, mid-season, maybe even twice a season, changing out that line, you know, to try to get fresh line into it and get rid of that memory out of that other line. And that helps a lot. And just for giggles, you know, one of my favorite ice fishing poles I ever had before my kids broke it, was there was a 3-piece fly fishing rod. I took the top point of that fly rod glued on a wooden dowel and taped on a ice fishing handle or a reel. And that was one of my favorite ice fishing jigging poles for the longest time. So I think you have another question?
You get the Green Hornet from Grumpy.
Yeah, so I saw a question about augers. And it was basically talking about how the link took you to how you can attach your ice augers to a drill bit and how they have different attachments to put your drill into a traditional cage setup so it looks like a gas powered auger. I would recommend those because if you're just going to go out and buy an auger that will attach to a drill bit, it'll power it, you know, but you think about what you're holding on to this drill bit, you know, especially if you get up into 8 inches or whatever. It's kind of hard to manipulate that. These things are, you know, using a cage system, so it's easier to manipulate and drill the ice if you have that attachment for your drill and auger. So I would recommend those.
And the big thing to the drill augers is, you know, just like any drill chuck, you know, unless you've got a good chuck, as you're drilling, you know, and you rapidly let off the drill, you can tend to loosen that chuck bit. So unless you've got something, you know, you see a lot of them have a disc that's bigger than the hole diameter. You know, it's happened to me quite a bit when I first bought my drill attachment, you know, making sure that chuck is good and seated, because that can come loose. And if you don't have a way to stop that auger from going down the hole, and that drill comes loose, you know, now you've got no auger. You know, but a lot of the brands do make them with discs. A lot of them have handhelds. But if you're gonna DIY, you know, which I've done and seen a lot of, just keep that in mind that there's a high chance that your drill chuck's gonna come loose off of that auger, and what's gonna keep that auger from going down the hole.
Yeah.
But I do love that drill auger is my favorite.
Yeah, someone asked that question if it's thinking about keeping it lighter. It's the way to go. If you can afford it. The drill's expensive. It should be a brushless, like high volt drill kind of. They've gotten lighter, but I think you want a brushless, like at least, I don't know, what is it, 18, 20 volt? I don't even know, but
hammer drill.
They're the way to go.
Yeah, hammer drill is probably what you want to use. Whoever said that. 18 volt, 19 volt, somewhere around there.
Tony, someone asked for panfish line, 2 or 4 pound.
So I like to run 4 pound, just because I don't know how many times I've caught a pike or a trout or a big fish jigging for panfish. I like having that 4 pound. It gives me a little bit, you know, a little bit more wiggle room to be able to reel in a big fish. But I've also tipped mine, you know, if I've got really finicky perch or panfish, you know, the smaller your line, the better it's going to be, because they can be pretty picky. But I will almost always have 4 or 6 pound line on my pole. I just might tip it with a 2 pound or a 4 pound leader to give me that visibility, depending on, you know, where I'm fishing, what I could get into.
Question: Have you ever shinned an auger to get blades at a right angle? If so, how easy it is to do? What is the best way to do it? Could you explain that one a little bit more?
I think Katrina,
like if your blades get off, because like I have an old auger and so like it's not cutting right, and I looked it up and it said you can shim your blades to get them to catch the ice so it'll shave better, and I'm just like, I've never done that. So I'm wondering if anyone has experience with that.
I'll let Tony the toolmaker take that one.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say that. I've had that happen before with an older, you know, yard sale auger. And the one that I had, they didn't make blades for anymore. You know, I've got the equipment do it. I actually readjusted the angle on the blade itself by grinding it down and sharpening that way to get the angle adjusted. Shim wise, I mean, unless it has to be something custom made, because you'd want it to go through the through holes for your bolt. Because if not, you know, it gets really cold, it gets really warm. You've got a lot of expansion, contraction. You put a shim in there that's not anchored in somehow through the bolt, it's going to come out over time. I mean, it depending on your make and model. You know, I tried Googling to see replacement blades. You can usually get a set of replacement blades for like $10, $15. I don't know if that's an option for what you're dealing with. No, probably didn't really answer the question, but hopefully that helped a little bit.
I think the answer is you need a new auger. Yeah.
Old hand augers are cool though.
Yeah, I've got I don't know if you've ever seen. Have you ever seen a Swedish spoon?
Yeah, I've got one.
Yeah, that was the first auger I ever bought. It was from a yard sale. It was a Swedish spoon. Google it. It's in the shed. Otherwise, I'd show it. But what it actually does is you see a lot of the augers have you know, a corkscrew look to it. This one is just a spoon. It looks just like a spoon with a little concavity, got a sharp edge, and you actually cut a cylinder out of the ice. So after you get done cutting, you actually pull out a cylinder-shaped chunk of ice. But you know, there's so many different makes, models, and brands, but that one, I keep that one around. It's pretty reliable.
Catherine, someone had an idea in the chat there for
Brian,
credit card.
it was Brian. What were you saying
Just can use
about the credit cards?
Yeah.
Oh, the blade bolts to the head of the auger. You can cut an old credit card into 1/4-inch strips, and you can put that credit card on either side of the bolts to adjust that angle of the blade, either more or less. They used to come back in the old days. They used to come with shims. It's because you shim it all the way, but they don't do shims anymore. But you may have to put a couple, stack them up. But if you put them on either side, because there's the one I'm thinking, I've got a Strike Master. It's got 2 bolts in it to hold the blade on there. If you put it on the blade, away from the blade, it will make it less of an angle. If you put it on the blade side of the things, on the bolts, blade side between the bolts, it'll make it a steeper angle, and you can mess around with it that way. And then once the angle's right, it'll cut like a dream. You'll know you got the angle when you get it. So you're gonna have to practice with it. But you're not gonna be able to get more than 2 in there, because then the third one will slip out. But try it with the, like I said, 1/4-inch strips. Cut them the length of the credit card. That should be about the length of the blade. That's what I use.
That's like a financial tip too.
Thanks.
Cut your credit card.
More money.
Cut your credit cards. Then you won't be able to buy
Credit
fishing
card
gear.
got
Yeah.
Whichever one has the highest APR, use that one.
fish upload.
I think that's it. If
All right. Anybody else got questions? I'm just looking through.
credit card thing. Thanks, Brian.
Yes. So it's like when you're on the ice, before you go out and to the place you can touch, you got to go where you can touch. Like it doesn't even go to the top of your boot. Try to kick through it, and if you can, that's when you know you can go in the place where you can't touch, because it's going to be the same thing.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
What's your name?
Declan,
Thank you, Declan.
thank you.
So it's like 8:36. We're about an hour past where we wanted to be. Brian, are you ready to do the drawing?
I am.
List of people that are here now.
Yes, well, using a random number generator, the winner for tonight is, if they're still here, let me check real quick. Some people have been dropping out here. Yes, Patrick's Beecher is the winner.
Patrick.
So I don't know if we
You
actually
there?
said what he was winning.
No,
Oh.
no. Patrick's. Is he here? Is he on with us? Yeah.
He
He's
was.
right there.
Oh, there he is.
Yep, Patrick's, there he
Oh,
is.
nice.
He's looking for the
All right,
unmute
so-
button, so he's present.
Awesome. So you're getting Patrick's. What's your real name? This name is confusing to me. He's muted. Can we get him unmuted?
He has to do that.
Oh, sorry. I thought you guys had to do it. It's
Yeah.
Patrick Beecher.
Patrick. Okay. All right. So did you know what?
Well,
you know what
when
you
I
want?
signed on, it was like Patrick's iPad.
Oh,
Oh man, I'm super psyched.
Yeah. So you're getting
I've never been
slide.
ice fishing before.
Perfect.
Oh,
Perfect. I'm
perfect.
glad it's
I-
going to somebody. So you have no gear.
I've got no gear.
All right. So the only thing you're going to need is an auger and a bait holder or a tackle box, whatever you choose. So next
Oh,
time, where do you live? Where do you live?
I live in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, that's not too far. All right. I got to get your email and stuff. We'll figure out arrangements on how to get you the stuff, or you can just show up
Okay.
at one of our next events and we'll have it there for you. But I'm in Pulaski.
Awesome.
I'm in Rochester or Canandaigua area.
And yeah, and Brett's in Rochester, so we can figure
Yeah.
out a way to get it.
I
to you.
mean, I work in Batavia, so Rochester's not far from Batavia for me.
Go Bills.
Okay, so Patrick,
Go
you got
Bills.
you got my email from the original website, like
For the sign-on?
invitation for this. Yeah,
Yeah, I let me just check my phone just to make sure, because I don't want to,
yeah.
don't get off.
Send me
but
an email so
sure
I
I do.
so I got your contact.
And Garrett, we
So
might
it's
be able to send
out-
him a message.
It says it comes from Ed, so the email said it's from the administration for backcountry hunters.
Oh, well, no, if you go right to the BHA's website and go to chapters and then New York State and then chapter news, there's the invitation for this event and my email's right there, but it's just my name, Garrett Burback at yahoo.com. Wonder if I can just send you my email right here.
I was gonna say, yeah, maybe that, or I can give you my email address.
Chat. Let me see if I can do this.
Just be aware, this is being recorded, so if you say it out loud, everyone in the world can
Yeah.
have
And
access
it's
to
on
it.
Facebook Live, isn't it? Wow. that's-
It's
Oh,
on
boy.
live. Yeah.
Gary, you're gonna be blowing up.
Yeah, your email's.
I would,
loaded.
what we could do is, Patrick, you could
I
search.
think I'm
for the
sending him
chapter.
a
Yep.
private message.
Yeah, you should be able
Yeah.
to send him a private message. If you select his picture, send chat, should be able to send him a message.
Parents, you could also DM the Facebook page, right?
Or Instagram.
Instagram, whatever, yeah.
Yep. Okay, I follow both of them, so
Patrick, I
Okay.
should have sent you.
I
you
see
got
a
it?
direct message right here.
Okay, perfect. So just send me an email and then we'll coordinate and figure out how to get you this stuff.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Thank you guys so much. Good luck out there.
You're helping me out. You're making me some more room in my garage. So I got too much fishing gear and everything else around.
Nice. Well, I'm excited. I'm definitely excited. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for all the
All
info.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is
I'll
there
be in
any-
touch real soon.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
All right, thanks, guys.
Anybody else got any questions before we get off of here? Greg, what's up, buddy?
Hi,
I see you
Greg.
there quietly.
How are you?
Well, that kid, when's the kid do?
August.
Oh, geez, you got a lot of time.
Yeah.
You been up fishing at all?
A little bit down in this area now. I've gotten out. The ice, I don't know. It's pretty warm now this week down here, so I don't know how the ice is going to be.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to get back up to the Adirondacks maybe once more this season.
Did you see Todd while you were up there?
No. I tried to meet up with them, but schedules didn't align. So maybe next time.
Yeah.
Do you ice fish up there?
That was my first time going up there ice fishing. Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to get out more down here. Luckily, it's been cold enough down here, but I don't know. Now it's looking like it's going to be pretty warm this week. I think it's going to rain down here on this weekend. So
Rain's the worst.
Yeah.
I think we're going to lose a lot of this.
Tony, I took Greg fishing out on Lakeview, and we were on my canoe a couple years ago, and we went through like that channel that goes all the way to Sandy Creek, and he was fishing a popper, and I think it's the first time I ever went out there either. We're fishing a popper right there, and he was pulling it, and all of a sudden you saw the whole water just like shift at his lure. And we both paused. We're like, what the hell? I'm like, pull it again, pull it again. He popped it again in a boat fin, nailed it, and we got it up in the boat. Yeah, we're like, what is it? What is it? And we're like, is it a snakehead? Are we supposed to kill it? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's native. And we threw it back, and then later on we went up and looked it up, and we're like, holy cow. It is pretty good, probably 6 pound bowfin. Just nailed
put up
his
a
lure.
fight. That was the first one I ever caught.
They are fun. They fight. They're creepy looking things, but they fight.
They're weird.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of those in that pond over in Fulton that you can't eat anything out of. Don't talk
Oh
about
yeah, I went to that last year.
How do you say it? I can't say it.
Nianawana.
Nianawana?
Yeah.
Nianawana.
There's like monster crappie in there. Like everything's huge in there, but you can't eat any.
Oh yeah.
Like there's a sign that says "Do not eat this fish."
Yeah, blue-green algae isn't good for you.
No.
Yeah, I had no idea that place existed until last year. We went to like a friend was like, oh, we're camping in Fulton. I'm like, all right, yeah, we'll go over there. I'm like, what's this lake? And there's signs everywhere like, you cannot eat, do not swim, and do not eat anything from this lake. It's like,
it's like Onondaga though, isn't that one same boat? You know, you can catch.
I think Onondaga
is
officially cleaned up now.
Yeah.
It's all capped.
Yeah, you can catch a monster, but nothing you can touch at that.
Don't eat it.
Yeah.
It's a shame, you know, like you drive by Onondaga Lake, you know, especially if you're going to the state fairgrounds, there's all this like beautiful waterfront property, and it's just like construction. Yeah, construction sites. It's like all because of pollution. It's not very valuable right now.
I'm gonna hop off, guys. Thanks for all the info tonight.
Yeah, we'll see you, Greg.
I'll see you.
He was.
I think we're done. We only got a couple people left. Other than that, I think it went all right. Hour and 45 minutes. So
I think we're good. I'm gonna stop the Facebook feed and cut the recording, and we're good to go.
cool.
Good job, guys. That's great.
Thank you, well.
Yeah, that was good. Good job.
Yeah, it was fun.
Cool. All right. I'm gonna
Yeah,
get off.
boys.
We'll see
All
you
right.
See you guys.
Thanks
Have a
all.
good night.
out there.